Chair Thompson.
Present.
Vice Chair Hirsch.
Present.
Board Member Baltai.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is oral communications. The public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
Yes, I see one raised hand at the moment. Let me share, quickly share a timer.
I don't see the raised hand anymore.
I think the raised hand went down.
Okay,
Yep, it's back now again. Yes.
Back now.
back up again.
Yes, yeah. Let me quickly have a problem with sharing. Okay, so now we should see a timer, and our first speaker is Lisa Van Dusen. Lisa, you have 3 minutes to share your comments.
So I'm not sure, is this to speak on the on the item on the agenda? I don't know if this is the appropriate time. I just wasn't clear about that. So
No, it's for any item that's not on the agenda.
okay, no, then I will lower my hand for later.
Okay,
Later.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
no worries. No worries at all. Okay. I don't see any other members of the public raising their hand at this time, so I'll move on. So the next item is agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
No changes.
All right, thank you. Our next item is city official reports. Oh, I missed something, sorry. I missed the first item of the adoption of a resolution authorizing the use of teleconferencing for the Architectural Review Board during the COVID-19 state of emergency. So I believe this is something we need to make a motion on.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jody Gerhardt. I'm the manager of current planning. And the item before you is for teleconferencing. It is a resolution that allows us to continue 100% virtually. We also want to let you know, though, that council has asked us to go change to hybrid meetings starting in March. And so our next meeting, March 3rd, would be a hybrid meeting. I will be in person along with any of the board members that would like to join me. The public is also welcome to attend. However, we will continue to have virtual participation as well, so they do not need to come in. They can still participate virtually. And so we will start that in March.
Cool. So I think we still need to make a motion to continue teleconferencing through the month of February.
Correct. Thank you.
And I will conduct, waiting for the motion, sorry.
Yeah, we need a motion. Will someone make a motion?
I move that we continue teleconferencing through the end of the month.
I'll second. Okay, motion by Baltai, seconded by Hirsch.
And the vote. Board Member Baltai.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hirsch.
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Very exciting. And then I guess for city official reports where we left off, I'll hand it back to you, Jody, if there's any more to discuss on that.
Yes, thank you. Medina will bring up the screen. The first item, again, we just talk about the hearing dates and that in March we will go to hybrid. And I don't know if you have the screen, Medina.
Yeah, I do. Here it is.
And then the next page. So you'll see on March 3rd, our agendas are starting to get full again. So we are likely going to be discussing 901 South California, 250 Cambridge Avenue. We will have a discussion about objective standards again, and then also the council's annual work plan that they would like us to look into. And we can discuss the annual report that's in the ARB's bylaws and see if we want to combine those or keep them separate and how we go about that. So that will be for March 3rd. Thank you.
Okay. thank you. All right, we can move on to our next item, which is the study session. So this is for 525 East Charleston Road. It's a study session on a proposed mixed-use project that includes 2,750 square feet of ground floor office for nonprofit use, 50 units of 100% affordable rental housing, 50% of which will be for residents with special needs on a 0.78 acre site. So I will hand it over to staff.
And yes, I just wanted to introduce this project a little bit with all of the various state housing changes to the laws. This is our first project that is going through the ministerial process. So in this particular case, we are not using the ARB findings. This is a ministerial project that only needs to abide by the objective standards that are in our code. And so we've tried to list that out in the staff report. And Stan will give a presentation. No motion is needed at the end of this, but we do want to hear your thoughts about how the project conforms to the code. If you have any questions related to that, or if you have any general improvements that the county may want to consider. So with that, I will let Stan take it away. Thank you.
Quick question. Do we need to do disclosures at this time for this project?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I'm not 100%, but better safe than sorry.
And then also I wanted to remind about oral communications. I may have missed that.
Yeah, I believe we already asked if
Okay.
anyone had comments on things not on the agenda.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay. I see that board member Hirsch has left his seat temporarily. So I think we might need to wait for him to come back.
Should I go ahead and get my presentation up?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I will disclose that I visited the site. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Board member Hirsch, do you have any disclosures?
The same. I've visited the site a couple of times and actually played pickleball nearby, so I'm very familiar with this area.
And then I'll also disclose that I visited the site multiple times and also the material board at City Hall. Okay, take it away, Stan.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Here's the cover slide. As Jody said, a study session. Interested in ARB comments and input for this ministerial project. Well, now my slides are not advancing. That's just not fair. They were when we practiced. Well, I guess we go back to
Are
Medina
you using arrows or enter?
Yeah. Well, we try it. Okay, enter. There we go. Thank you. So project location, it sounds like everybody's familiar with, on East Charleston Road, just adjacent almost to Middlefield Road. Whoops. Did my sharing just go away?
Yeah, it stopped.
What's up with that? How's that?
Yes, we can-
Okay,
back.
great. Now enter's not working as a advance. It worked on the first slide, but now it's not working.
Yeah, I can share the screen, but maybe before I do that, can you just click on the screen, on your screen with the mouse?
Sure. I am, oh, there we go. We'll keep trying. That's great. Okay, next slide. As Jody pointed out, we have multiple state laws in action here. AB 2162 is the main one that's imposed the requirements for streamlined ministerial application review for projects that qualify, which this one does, 100% affordable, with a minimum of 25% of the units for supportive housing, This one has half, 50% affordable housing, excuse me, 50% of the 50 units, 25. And no CEQA is required as well. The city had 60 days to review the application, complete application, and apply objective standards. And as we said, the ARB's role is advisory, but comments encouraged for the applicant and public. The state density bonus law also applies and allows up to 4 concessions from zoning standards. 3 have been requested: building height, lot coverage, and FAR changes and slight increases have been requested. Other state law, AB 1763, allows 0 residential parking to be required. The project has 11 spaces for the office uses, which is per code, and 8 additional spaces are provided. I think we've gone over the summary there. The property is owned by Santa Clara County, and Eden Housing is the proposed developer. The project is 4 stories in height with a 3-story element facing East Charleston. Again, 19 parking spaces proposed. The applicants had extensive pre-application community engagement with the neighborhood and received requests for using themes from the Eichler neighborhoods and the architectural design, just not obviously the height, but they did include several different aspects, which I'm sure Kate Conley, the architect, will go over. And there are some pretty important amenities nearby the project. Here's the site plan, and I'm highlighting 2 particular aspects that were the kind of the important design changes that we worked with the applicants. Their electrical transformer is here in what was one of the parking spaces because it had to be out of the front setback. No such structures are allowed on the front setback, so it's over in this location. And also we had to address the location of the staging of the refuse waste bins for garbage collection, since the garbage truck cannot access the site, and the project has a waste collection room back here off the parking lot where all the refuse comes down and shoots down from the various floors. So the garbage bins will be rolled out on garbage day to an area that's got adequate paving, pavers and such as part of the architectural theme. Just wanted to point those 2 things out. Here's the architecture, the elevations. The south elevation facing East Charleston Road just shows the 3-story element, and the west elevation facing the park, the trail and such. I'm not going to go over these in detail because I'm sure Kate will. And the other 2 elevations. In terms of the conformance to plans and policies, the project does conform to the general plan. The zoning is public facilities, which does allow multiple family housing on publicly owned property, which is owned by the county, of course. The 3 zoning concessions requested: building height has 2 components, a overall 50-foot height requirement. The height is requested is actually 49 feet overall, but there's a requirement for 35 feet within 150 feet of residential, which is across East Charleston. And so that's for their request for the concession to exceed that height. Lot coverage zoning requires 30%. The project is proposed 39%. Floor area ratio zoning objective requirement is 1:1, and they're requesting 1.33 to 1. Like another key issue that was discussed in the project review was a proposal by the Green Meadow Community Association across East Charleston for a secondary access route to assist in access on and off the property. And the proposal was for utilizing an existing drive path all across the Challenger School property, along parallel to the bike path, and then all down to the southerly end of the where an existing Ability Path office is, and out to east to Middlefield Road. This is all county-owned property, so which again is as well as the project site. So the request really was, would Santa Clara County be willing to entertain that secondary access approach? There was a traffic analysis of trip generation done, excuse me, and which did not really end up, pardon me, did not indicate a significant additional amount of peak hour trips. And the county did decide to not consider allowing that proposed route. And since again, the traffic is not sufficient to for the city to require additional analysis or the secondary access. The conclusions are that the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance, including the concessions and that state law provisions allow those concessions, and the streamline review, and that ministerial approval will occur in the next couple of weeks. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
We do.
Okay, great. You guys have 10 minutes. And before I start the clock, I'll ask you to state and spell your name for the record.
Yes, and just Stan, if you would maybe hit
Yeah,
escape.
there it is.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. I was getting there.
No problem. All right. Well, I will share my presentation. And my name is Kate Conley. That's Kateconley. I did want to thank the board for the opportunity to present Mitchell Park Place, our proposed development at 525 East Charleston Road, to you today. Again, my name is Kate Conley, and I'm a principal at Architects Fora and the project architect for this project. Our primary design goal for this project is to create a welcoming space that is inclusive of people of all abilities. And as Stan noted, this project does qualify under state density bonus laws, AB 2162 and AB 1763. The project site is in a PF, or public facility zone, with an MISP, or major institution special facilities designation for use. The site is also bordered on all three sides by additional MISP use and Charleston Road to the south. The County of Santa Clara has owned the parcel of land since 1957, and the property has been leased to its current occupant, Cape Path Abilities United, now known as Ability Path, since 1979. Ability Path's lease with the county has a termination date of October 15th, 2022. The property is able to be redeveloped by the county upon the expiration of this lease, which is part of the reason this site was selected for our project. The site's immediate neighbor is the Challenger School to the east and north, and the Unitarian Universalist Church to the west. The Green Meadow neighborhood and Charleston Shopping Center are further to the south across Charleston Road. The site is easily accessible from several public transit routes, including the VTA 104 and 21 lines and the Crosstown Shuttle. And additionally, Charleston Road has protected bike lanes, and there's a bike and pedestrian only multi-use path that connects Charleston Road to Mitchell Park along the site's western edge. Our streetscape diagram showed the building massing in relation to neighboring sites. The most comparable building on this stretch is the Stevenson House Senior Housing Development, neighboring the other side of the Unitarian Universalist Church. And you see that on the far left here. We learned through our community outreach workshops, as Stan mentioned, that the mid-century Eichler aesthetic is very important to the project site's neighbors. And so we've incorporated those design principles through 2 levels of strong low slope roof lines with extended eaves and exposed beams, as well as vertical panel cladding and clerestory windows to highlight the main entry to the building. The color palette is sourced from the City of Palo Alto's Eichler design guidelines. To provide light and views that do not look toward the residential neighborhood across Charleston, we've introduced angled sawtooth projections that direct views away from the residential neighborhood and up Charleston instead. And the facades facing the courtyard feature horizontal and vertical shading devices to protect the glazing from south and west facing sun. As you can see on our materials palette right here, we've taken inspiration from the center image showing slate blue siding with wood accents and dark brown beams and fascia. Eichlers are known for their contrasting recessed entryway, and here a stone veneer in warm tones provides that contrast. For increased durability, we're employing metal panels in lieu of traditional wood siding, At the stair towers, we're using the panels on the left in a sandstone color and horizontal orientation, and switching to a recessed panel at each floor level to articulate it with a shadow line. And at the sawtooth outer walls, we reference that kind of classic Eichler board and batten paneling with a slate blue panel featuring intermittent raised projection to mimic those battens. The board shows our proposed cement plaster texture, which is painted with one of the three colors arranged around it. We have the slate blue at the first floor to match the board and batten paneling above, and dark brown charcoal between the windows to match the dark anodized bronze window mullions, and then the cocoa up at the fourth floor level. The beams and fascia will also be painted to match the dark anodized bronze. And we have here a small sample of the stone veneer at the entryway that shows a mix of warm and neutral tones. And again, for durability, for our wood paneling, we're specifying a metal panel with wood appearance and a honey blonde color, which will be installed in a vertical orientation. The floor plans of the 4 floors of our building are featured here. The ground floor features a large nonprofit office space in pink for the site's current tenant, Ability Path. Offices for Eden Housing's property management and resident services teams extend out to screen 1 row of parking from public view. A bike parking room and community room with large sliding doors connect directly to the courtyard. And there are also 3 first-floor apartments for residents who may have mobility impairment and would prefer a ground level unit. The second and third floor plans are nearly identical, while the 4th floor shows the step back volume along Charleston Road to reduce the massing of the building as viewed from the public street. And we did include larger floor plans of all the floors if needed during the Q&A period, but I'm going to run through these quickly now to conserve time, if it decides to let me advance. There we go. On the roof, we're showing a schematic photovoltaic array, as well as the mechanical equipment and equipment screen on the 4th floor roof. The material of the lower section of sloped roof along Charleston is a dark anodized bronze metal roof, and the raised fascia surrounding the photovoltaic array will be the same metal. The remainder of the roof is a typical TPO membrane enclosed by a raised parapet. And a few things to just highlight here in our building sections. In the east-west building section at the top, you'll see, the 4th floor sloped roof, as well as the 2nd floor volume overhanging some tuck under parking. And in the north-south section, note the stepped back 4th floor volume along Charleston Road. In the east-west section on the bottom right, note the solar shades at each unit facing the courtyard. The existing site plan shows the current approximately 5,000 square foot building currently home to Ability Path. And this is the latest version of this landscape site plan. Due to a recent conversation with city staff about the location of the transformer, the parking count has been reduced from 20 spaces to 19 spaces. The parking area is permeable paving, as is the trash staging area adjacent to the driveway, and a large planter along Charleston Road hosts many new trees that screen the building facade. The courtyard to the rear features a variety of spaces to support activities for all types of residents: an outdoor dining and gathering space with a trellis overhead, planting beds for a resident community garden, and a rain garden. A quiet seating area with a labyrinth that pays homage to the Linda Steele Memorial Garden that currently occupies the northeast corner of the site, elements of which will be transplanted as part of this design. This diagram clearly demarcates the project's outdoor spaces: public space in orange, semi-private, semi-public space in pink, and completely private space in blue. Both the neighbors and advocates for future residents prefer that the development's private outdoor space be completely separated from the public realm. So we oriented the building to shield the courtyard from the public way while still allowing for good solar access from the south. And our circulation diagram shows the organization of vehicular access in blue, bike pathways in green, and pedestrian pathways in dashed yellow. The multi-use path connecting Charleston to Mitchell Park runs along the western edge of the site. Due to the popularity of the Nelson Drive crossing for cyclists, we located 2 extra wide gates through the perimeter fencing closest to the multi-use path. And we've also consolidated vehicular access to the current single existing driveway to separate vehicular circulation from bike and pedestrian circulation as much as possible. This also limits the number of opportunities for turning vehicles to cross the bike lane and sidewalk along Charleston. The obliquely angled pedestrian paths through the site invite a more organic walking pattern while still referencing the angular sawtooth geometry of the building. And here on the landscape materials board, you'll see the palette of stormwater friendly paving selections like unit pavers and granitecrete in warm tones to be employed throughout the site. And the site furnishings invoke that open angle geometry of the landscape plan, as well as the wood paneling used on the building. Just a few things to highlight in the planting selections. The selected trees, though deciduous, do not lose their leaves in our climate, providing year-round privacy and screening to residents and neighbors. And the smaller plants are selected for their range of color, drought tolerance, and support of local habitat and pollinators. Our 3D images bring all of these design moves together. We do have enlarged versions of these views available as well if needed later on. The view from Charleston toward the main entrance shows the building in its most Eichler aspect, with the blue vertical board and batten siding and contrasting dark beams and eaves at the 3rd and 4th floor roof lines. We've bumped the opacity of the trees in these images to allow a clear view to the architecture for this review board, but in reality, a rather dense cluster of trees will screen the majority of this facade. The view from Nelson Drive crossing shows the step back 4th floor volume along Charleston Road, and it also shows the assembled material palette most clearly. The sandstone panels at the stairs with reveals at the floor line, the cocoa brown plaster, blonde wood look paneling, slate blue board and batten paneling, and the dark anodized infill between windows. And then the courtyard view brings more wood paneling into play, and you can see the labyrinth and central tree in clear view with the raised planting beds beyond. And lastly, we were asked by planning staff to study highlighting the building entry. We felt it was important to maintain the recessed entryway in keeping with the Eichler design language, but took our cues from other Eichler homes in the area by highlighting the path to the main entrance with a trellis in an accent color of lime green. We introduced a few more smaller trellises in this style to designate secondary exterior building entrances at 3 other locations on the 1st floor. And that concludes our portion of this presentation. Thank you to the board and to city staff for providing this opportunity to share our project with you.
Thank you. That was exactly 10 minutes. Well done. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Yes, we have several raised hands and they are increasing. So let me quickly share my timer. So our first speaker is Robert Stromberg. And I just wanted to ask quickly the applicant. I believe you want me to promote Andrew Barnes, right, as a panelist.
Yes, please.
Yeah, doing it now.
And Medina, I also see development team 03. Is that someone from the applicant's team or is that a member of the public? Because they have their hand raised. And so no, we shouldn't have additional applicants speaking at this time.
Hi, Jody. I don't anticipate any other members of the applicant team joining us.
Okay, we'll ask them when we get there. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And Robert, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good morning, board and staff. My name is Bob Stromberg. I work with Destination Home. We're a nonprofit organization working to end and prevent homelessness throughout Santa Clara County. And just wanted to call in to say that we're really happy to see this development moving forward. We know that we have a crisis of housing affordability in our community, and from our work with the homelessness prevention system, we know that those in the extremely low income group, ELI, are most at risk of losing their homes, and therefore very excited to see this development moving forward, which will include some additional extremely low income affordable homes. I would like to thank the county, Eden, and the architects and the city of Palo Alto for moving this forward and encourage broad support for more housing like it. Thank you so much.
Mr. Stromberg, would you also state and spell your name for the record?
Most certainly. First name is Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, and my last name is Stromberg, S-T-R-O-M-B-E-R-G.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Nieder.
Thank you. My name is Brian Nieder, B-R-Y-A-N, Nieder, N-E-I-D-E-R. I'm the CEO of Ability Path, and as you know, we've had a used the facility on Charleston for many, many years. We're incredibly supportive of this project. We're grateful for the city and the county for their support in moving this very important project forward. The housing need for individuals with developmental disabilities is significant. This is a game changer for so many individuals, not just the affordable housing for the low-income communities, but certainly for those with disabilities as well. Eden Housing and Kate in particular have taken enormous feedback in accommodating a lot of design input. And for us in the future, we will be occupying part of the ground floor, a similar space to where we actually provide programs for the clients that we serve today. We're looking forward to the opportunity in the future to make these inclusive offerings with a very highly regarded and I think recognized art program in Palo Alto. And also we've created a computer program and technical support program that we're excited to be able to offer all of the residents in the facility going forward. So again, Ability Path, we're over 100 years old. And this is something that while we have had exclusive use of the space for close to 50 years, this is a greater need for the community at large, and we enthusiastically and 100% support the vision for this property and the support that both the city of Palo Alto and the county of Santa Clara have provided. So with that, I will again thank Kate for the great design work and Eden Housing as well.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jen Stockley.
Good morning. My name is Jan Stokely. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Choices. Housing Choices is a nonprofit organization. We focus on supporting people with developmental disabilities to secure safe, stable, and affordable housing in their home communities. We've partnered with Eden Housing on a number of projects across Santa Clara County to include people with developmental disabilities successfully in their affordable housing. And we've been working with them for more than 20 years, and they have been a great partner to accommodate the housing needs of people with developmental disabilities. In Palo Alto, there are more than 500 people with developmental disabilities living in the city. Over half of them are adults. And of the adult population, more than 80% are still living in the home of aging parents. And the number one reason for that reality is the lack of affordable housing. People with developmental disabilities have supportive services that are funded by the San Andreas Regional Center so that they can live independently. But the greatest barrier is their extremely low income and the lack of housing to meet that need. When we talk to parents of adults with developmental disabilities, their number one concern is what's going to happen when I'm no longer here to be the housing provider and the service provider. Their second concern is they would really like their adult child to be able to remain in the home community they grew up in, where they know how to use transit, where they have friends and connections, where the barista at Starbucks knows their name. And so having the opportunity for the more than 500 Palo Alto residents with developmental disabilities to stay in Palo Alto, to not be forced out of the county, is a tremendous one. I'd also like to add that this location is ideally suited for people with developmental disabilities because it's transit oriented. Most adults with developmental disabilities don't own cars and don't drive. And then finally, I'd like to acknowledge the amazing design work that the team for this project has done. They've consulted so many people and they've developed such a nuanced design that really works well with the site and the surrounding community. So I think the legacy of this project, the land has been of service to people with developmental disabilities for more than 50 years. This project is going to commit that site to serving people with developmental disabilities and addressing their number one barrier to independent community living in Palo Alto, which is affordable housing. So well done to Eden and everyone who supported this project to move forward.
Ms. Stokely, could I also ask you to spell your name for the record?
Sorry, Jan, Jan, Stokely, Stokley.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is development team number 3.
Hi, I am Sarah Erickson speaking on behalf of myself, and the Zoom name, I apologize, is from my work, and I don't know how to update it. I will look into that. My name is spelled Sareerickson, and I am speaking in support of this new affordable housing development in Palo Alto. It is so important to provide affordable housing options for lower income residents and support services for residents with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. This development is very much needed and will be a community benefit, allowing Palo Alto to be vibrant, equitable, welcoming, and sustainable for everyone. Again, Sareerickson. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Penny Elson.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thanks. I live in Green Meadow, and I was the person who has been the primary point of contact for the neighborhood association regarding the neighborhood association's request for using the fire lane route as a second egress. I am seeing for the first time in these drawings the trash bin structure at the driveway ingress egress. Is that actually a structure? And I'm curious if it's going to obstruct sight lines of exiting drivers turning right, because the school commute crossing is immediately to the right of that egress, and that could be a pretty serious problem. So when I'm finished here, could I ask someone to please answer that question and how the sightline issue might be addressed? Because I think that's a significant problem. We've had a lot of people hit by cars at that intersection. All right, that said, I just want to make clear that there really is no opposition to this project. The Green Meadow Community Association has stated clearly several times that they support the project and recognize the need for affordable housing, and they want to support this project. But they are concerned about traffic safety at this intersection. So I just want to reiterate that we really would like reconsideration of that second egress. We have read the traffic study that the county put together, which really ignores all the other traffic that this project is going to draw to the school commute route with uncontrolled U-turns before and after people park on Nelson Drive. And I think it's going to be the one thing we asked for nothing else, was to provide that second egress, which I think will be good for your organization as well. And I want to point out to Brian Nieder, if he's still there, from Abilities Path, that the county is pointing to Abilities Path as one of the organizations that's making use of that fire lane difficult. And it's set, from what I heard today, it sounds like your organization would benefit from a more campus-like connection to the Abilities Path facility on Middlefield Road. So I'm a little puzzled by where we've landed on this. It seems to me that this is a relatively low-cost solution to a problem that at the moment I don't think is really evident because traffic is so low due to COVID, but pre-pandemic traffic levels, when we get back to that, you're going to have a very difficult time using that driveway, and it's going to create very unsafe conditions for school commuting children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a person with the username Linnea.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lynnea Wickstrom. That's Linnea last name Wickstrom, Wickstrom. I'm a resident of Palo Alto for over 50 years and the parent of a young adult with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've supported this county project since its inception to provide much needed housing for people like my son. Eden Architects have held numerous community and focus groups. They've been very thorough and inviting in presenting their concepts and gathering community input. They've already implemented many suggestions from various members of the community and accommodated the concerns of the residential neighbors across Charleston. I hope you'll help speed this project on its way, and I'd like to give a minute of my time to my adult son, who is representative of the community that will be some of those housed in this project. Come here, Pear, step up.
Hi, good morning. My name is Per Maresca. That's P-E-R. Last name M-A-R-E. Per M-A-R-E-S-C-A. I'm a young adult with autism, and I've lived in Palo Alto all my life. I've advocated for this project for a long time because so many people like me need housing. This is a great opportunity, and please help this project move forward. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. My son is also a client of Ability Path and will be happy to continue to visit the offices there as part of the new building. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Kelly.
Is the clock resetting? Thank you. My name's John Kelly. I'm a citizen of Palo Alto. I'm here today to just express my incredibly strong support for this project. This is a phenomenal project. This is exactly the kind of project that Palo Alto needs. And I want to speak to you as members of the Architectural Review Board, not as members of the Palo Alto City Council, not as members of the Planning and Transportation Commission. I think the staff has done a great job outlining the project. The architect has explained it well. And I think today we should all just give ourselves, or maybe give the community a moment to thank Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simidian. Supervisor Simidian's been one of the leaders in bringing this project forward. This project wouldn't be even on the table if it weren't for the dedication of the county's land. I'd also like to associate myself with the comments of Mr. Stromberg, Mr. Nieder, especially Ms. Stokely, and also Lynnea Wickstrom, and Sarah Erickson as well. I think you've heard from a lot of people who know the needs of the community that would be served by this project much better than I do. And it's those people that we should really be trying to help here. So given what the staff said about the ministerial nature of the proceedings today and the objective standards which have already been met, I would like to encourage you to reframe what the ARB is going to do today. And I would point you to your 2021-2022 work plan, which had as an element to encourage the attainment of the most desirable use of land and improvements. That's something that's within the ARB's jurisdiction. And the question that I think you should really be asking yourselves today is, what can the ARB do to encourage the City Council to provide incredibly strong financial support for this project? Especially as Ms. Stokely explained, we know the community needs these services. We know that the over 500 people in Palo Alto today who lack, adequate housing, the 500 plus people who lack adequate housing and who also have developmental disabilities, they need this project. And this project is going to go forward more expeditiously, and it's going to be a better project if the city steps forward and provides financial support for it. I'm a cyclist. I've actually been hit by a car, and I want to commend the architect and Eden Housing for the design. I think the separation of the bicycle and pedestrian circulation from the vehicular circulation is phenomenal. So we've got what the community has asked for. It's an Eichler-inspired design. We've got people who really need this housing. And I would ask every person on the ARB to encourage the city council to provide as much support for this project financially as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, would you also spell your name for the record?
It's Johnkellley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a person with the name SCDD Central Coast.
Hi, that is me. My name is David Grady. David, and the last name Grady, and I am the manager, the regional manager for the State Council on Developmental Disabilities serving the Central Coast region. And I wish to offer my support to address the housing need, particularly for men and women with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Not only is it housing for this community, it is relief for families who have children living in their home as they age into their adult lives, and oftentimes placing the burden on senior parents. I also support Eden Housing, which has a strong track record throughout Santa Clara County in housing development of this type. Briefly, I'd just like to reflect, over 40 years ago, I worked at that location. I knew Linda Steele, I knew Betty Wright, I knew the organization when it seemed that all kids in Palo Alto volunteered at the swim center there. This property, it's important to recognize the legacy and the service it's provided to people with developmental disabilities. That whole area, this nearby school and the amenities at Mitchell Park are truly unique in Santa Clara County and needs to be honored. With Ability Path offering the services needed for to support the individuals living there, with the residential opportunities now made available there, not only are we honoring its past, but we are creating a model that can be repeated throughout our area to serve our clientele in the current century. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Verity.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Verity, S-A-R-A-H, last name V as in Victor, E-R-I-T-Y. I represent Ability Path and want to echo many of the comments made this morning in support of this project. According to the State Department of Developmental Disability Services, there are 10,753 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Santa Clara County. Also, according to DDS, 63% of those individuals are adults. And as you know, many of those adults fall into that extremely low income category. Of those 63% of adults, only 7% live independently. The need for this housing is significant, and I speak in great support of this project and want to thank the City Council for their support, this board for their support, for Eden Housing for their thoughtfulness and planning, and thank you for the time this morning.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Soheila Mozayan. Soheila, you would need to unmute yourself as well. Yep.
Good morning. My name is Soheila Mozayan and I work at Ability Path. I also want to echo, especially Mr. David Grady and John Keeley, that how much this project needs in our, we need it in our community. I have been serving our beautiful community for over 20 years. We live at the heart of Silicon Valley, surrounded by world-famous educational institutions like Stanford University and high-tech companies that you all know. I really believe that creating affordable housing units at 525 East Charleston has long been overdue. Now, kudos to Supervisor Semetian and others for their vision for support of this project. So we all must stay behind this project and strongly support it. The project will result in making this our city healthier, happier, and even more dynamic. As you may know, 12 families in Palo Alto got together and started our agency to serve their children because they didn't want them to see that their loved ones to live in institutions or live in other cities, to be able to receive needed services. So let's again together support this project in honor of them. Of course, since then, a lot of people have made so many personal and professional sacrifices for children and adults with disabilities to continue living in this wonderful city and receive high quality services. I want to add this, that in the previous meetings, I heard some people had concern about parking space, which I don't think it will be any issue. Just look at almost similar building at 1585 West El Camino Real in Mountain View with 26 studio units. Everyone thought it didn't have enough parking spaces. Today, only 2 parking spaces used by residents. So we need to stay firmly behind this wonderful project in our beautiful city. Thank you so much for everybody involved in this project.
Thank you. Chair Thompson, I see that Lisa Van Dusen raised her hand again.
Yes, I think she would be next. I just would want Soheila to spell her name if she's still on.
Yeah, just a second. Let me find her. Okay, Soheila, we should be able to hear you now.
Soheila. My last name is Mozayan, Mozayan. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair Thompson, I can unmute Lisa Van Dusen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Van Dusen. My name is spelled Lisa. Am I starting now or? Okay. Lisa, capital VAN, space, capital DUSEN. And I am the executive director of the Palo Alto Community Fund. However, I'm speaking today as an individual. I have lived in Palo Alto for a number of decades and been an engaged citizen here. And in my time here, this is, I think, one of the most exciting projects that I have witnessed for all the reasons that so many speakers have addressed. And I especially appreciate comments from those who are directly involved with the community of people with developmental disabilities. So thank you to all of you for speaking up this morning and sharing that. I was also at the city council meeting where this was discussed and want to kind of emphasize that I think it's wonderful that you're really looking so closely at the architecture and, you know, that this today is not about, you know, parking and circulation and whether the project moves forward. And I just also want to express my overwhelming support for this project. As we say in our family, it's pretty much perfect. While we know that nothing is actually perfect, it really, this has so many elements that are, you know, aligned with our goals as a community, particularly related to housing. And, you know, the 100% affordable, it's so inclusive, and particularly it's a very collaborative project with Ability Path and Eden Housing and so many others, Supervisor Josemidian, really all coming together to make this possible. I'd like to acknowledge specifically both Kates involved with Eden Housing and their really wonderful work, and the city staffs as well. The other thing that I think is quite
magical about this project is the geography of it and the location for all, again, the reasons that have been mentioned, the transit rich, all the other assets in that area that support community and support particularly this community with Ability Path right there. And I know they are doing a lot of work to make this possible. So all to say, I think we can be really proud of this. And I just want to encourage for, again, all the comments to make this move quickly and swiftly and with great support from the community. I trust all of you to make that happen. And a big thank you to everyone.
Thank you. And I believe Jennifer will be our last public speaker.
That's right. Yes, I don't see any raised hands. Jennifer, we should be able to hear you now.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Jen, short for Jennifer, Jenn, Wagstaff, Wagstaff, Hinton, Hinton. Dear members of the ARB, I'm delighted to be speaking here today as a Palo Alto native and current board director on Ability Path. I'm also the parent of our 32-year-old special needs daughter, Jane, who has been well served for nearly a decade by Ability Path, which is formerly Abilities United, and Gate Path, which merged in 2019. I can attest personally to the extreme need for affordable housing for special needs adults in our community. Our daughter still lives at home with us, as Sarah mentioned, and Jan Stokely, as do 80% of special needs adults, due to the lack of affordable housing in the Bay Area. She continues to attend her Ability Path programs by Zoom. This agency has served my family for decades, and I'm delighted that the proposed mixed-use ground floor accommodates for Ability Path in their ongoing operations post-construction, which includes, as CEO Brian Nider mentioned, computer training and the art program, which my daughter has enjoyed over many years. Finally, please give this important mixed-use project your full support today. It will definitely put Palo Alto on the map for inclusive communities, not only in Palo Alto, California, but probably nationwide. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. That concludes public comments.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, we will close the public comment part of this hearing. And I guess I will bring it back to the board and ask if there are any board members that have questions of staff or the applicant.
Sure. Shall I start us with a question or two?
Yes, go ahead, Board Member Valte.
Okay. So I'm looking at this like any other architecture review board project. It's obviously a wonderful project, but the same standards apply, and my questions are the same. To the staff, on the parking lot proposed, I didn't see anywhere a percentage of shading provided by the trees on the parking area. Has that been provided somehow or considered? I believe there's a rule requiring parking areas be shaded, a percentage of them be shaded.
Correct. There is a 50% shading requirement that is an objective standard. We do have the finger islands with trees in them. So I believe we are at the correct percentage, but we will certainly have the director double check that before signing off.
Okay, I didn't see an actual calculation of percentage. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yes.
Jody, if I might interject, there is a diagram on the the drawing set provided that does show the 50% shading.
Do you have a sheet number?
I'm looking up a sheet number for you right now. I'm stalling.
And thank you. Usually we get the chair to recognize you, but I appreciate you.
Apologies.
Let me move on while you're thinking about that.
Yes.
The next question is regarding the percentage of native plantings on the landscape plan. Again, sheets PL 2.8 A and B have detailed planting schedules, but I don't see a native plant breakout. And that's another one of our requirements that we ask for every project. to the applicant? Is that provided, or am I missing something somehow?
So Board Member Bolte, I'll have to look again to be sure, but I believe that the native planting requirement is an ARB finding and not an objective standard.
Okay, that's good to know.
I think I did find a shading diagram on PL 1.2. Although, yeah, I mean, it says shading diagram, at least in the title.
So is there a calculation of the shading percentage in that shading diagram? That's the question.
I think in the legend, but it's a little hard to, oh, I see how that works out. If you look at the legend, there's a hatch.
Which drawing are you looking at also?
PL 1.2. And in the legend, it says total shaded area, 1,850 square feet, 54% coverage.
I don't have that drawing. Here we are, PL 1.2. Okay, well, great. If the information's here, that's fine. I didn't notice it earlier.
Yeah, and on the native planting, I mean, it's a good comment that we can ask, Eden Housing to see if we can bump up those numbers, but I just don't know that we can require it.
Yeah, this is not so much a request for action. I'm just asking a question, but I want to be thorough that this is a question we ask frequently of every applicant. These are standards we care about, and this shouldn't be treated any differently. That'll be the gist of my comments too. To the architect, you're showing a solar shade detail above the windows on sheet, this detail 2 on sheet PA 10.1. Where does that occur on the building? How does that work? Please.
So this would be on the courtyard side. We have a kind of lattice of vertical and horizontal shading devices that are, mechanically fastened to the sheathing behind.
And if I understand, this is a thin metal piece that projects outward from the facade of the building. It says 8 to 14 inches. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You're confident. Well, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And my last question again is just typographic, I assume, but on the material board, you say you have aluminum window frames. On the drawings, they're specified as vinyl. Could you clarify which window construction you're proposing, please?
I don't believe we've selected a window product yet, but it will be the anodized bronze color.
But they will be vinyl windows, you think?
We typically use vinyl for the better thermal performance.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Board Member Bolte. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of discussion about the transformer location. We sort of end up with it in the parking lot as sort of as the last resort. I note that the actual building is, I guess, 26 feet back from the street, and the electrical room is on that end of the building, and the electrical. I'm just wondering if the transformer couldn't be located in the building at the point of the electrical room. I have no idea how much electrical equipment is inside, but you certainly might be able to locate it there if you put a screen in front of it and it became part of that facade. Did you consider that?
Would you like me to answer that, Jody? Or?
Yeah, these are questions of the applicant or staff.
Okay. We have not been allowed to have the transformer located in the setback, and setting it in front of the building would locate it in the 24-foot setback, which is why it was relocated to the parking lot.
But I'm mentioning the fact that the building is deeper at that point, it's actually 26 feet back. Am I correct in that? And also the electrical room, is it possible that it could be a recess and include the transformer in that recess, screened from the street in some way, but allowing front ventilation? So that it is eliminated from the parking lot. It's not an attractive, and then you have a feature, and then you have to landscape around it. And of course, you get a parking space back if you don't have it there.
Certainly, it is a special 24-foot setback along Charleston Road. So our first floor is only recessed 2 feet, and the sawtooth projections do extend out to that 24-foot setback line. The City of Palo Alto electrical utility has a 30-foot overhang, clear overhead space requirement above the transformer. So it would actually eliminate an entire stack of dwelling units in order to have the transformer located within the building footprint.
You cannot locate it in a recess that is open to the outside air as a part of the building itself?
No, there's a 30-foot overhead space requirement.
Oh.
And staff confirms that.
That's the killer right there. Okay, to that idea. Thank you.
Is that it for your questions, Board Member Hirsch?
I think that's all for questions. Yeah.
Okay, I have some questions. On that transformer item, what is the nature of the enclosure in terms of if there's a fence, or like what is the material of that fence? Is it kind of, what is the thinking behind that?
Yes, we've been discussing this with city staff. We plan to use dense bushes in the planting finger that is immediately in front of the transformer to screen the transformer rather than a fence.
Oh, sorry. So no fence, just landscape.
No fence, just planting. Yes.
Okay, I have another question. On the site plan, one of the members of the public had mentioned another egress path, second egress using a fire lane. Can I get a little bit more clarity on what the ask was and why it was not accommodated?
I believe we're deferring questions on the fire lane to representatives from the County of Santa Clara. I don't know if any of them are able to unmute.
Are they here?
We do have Consuelo Hernandez. I believe she's coming on.
Good morning, Chair Thompson and members of the ARB. Consuelo Hernandez, Director with the Office of Supportive Housing. And apologies, Chair, I missed the specific question that you had on the request.
Yeah, there was a member of the public, Ms. Penny Elson, who had mentioned that there was a request to consider a secondary egress using a fire lane. I'm also not 100% sure what this request is, but that it wasn't accommodated. So I just wanted to ask some clarity on this item if people are aware about this request.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. We did receive a request from the speaker to consider a second egress through that fire lane. I believe staff had it in their third or fourth slide. And the county is wearing two hats, if you will. The project team that you have here this morning, Natalie Monk, Andrew, and myself, oversee the housing portion, which is 525 Charleston. And the other parcels that are owned by the county are controlled by our facilities and fleet department. And so what we did is we worked together to determine if the request was reasonable, needed. We spoke to our current leaseholders, which I believe one of the speakers was on earlier to talk about their support for the project. So we took steps as staff to consider the request. And our understanding is that there was concern about the number of vehicles that were exiting the potential site in the future. And the traffic study that the staff mentioned did not reveal that there would be an impact from the traffic. Also, our leaseholders, they have the rights to that area, and we as county cannot impose this easement requirement on them. If they have plans for expansions and other projects in the future, and their leases run through 2059, I believe. So we weighed all of the facts and the impact the project would have. We also have to be very mindful of fair housing laws, which, we can't impose a specific thing on a development, particularly on a development that's for people that have special needs. So weighing all of that, we did talk to the neighbors, gave them the feedback, submitted information to them via email, very transparent with the information, and took the consideration seriously, walked through it. And at this point, the county's position is that it is not a needed request.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that.
And Chair Thompson, if I may, Penny Ellison had a second question about the trash enclosure, but I think it was about the trash staging area. That staging area out by the curb is not a structure in any way. It's just pavement on the ground for, day of service. When the bins are wheeled out, they would have a place to go that would be pervious pavement so that any runoff soaks into the ground. So there's no structure that would block views.
And that's because the trash vehicles won't be able to go inside the structure. They'll be on Charleston picking up the trash.
Correct. We're not sure exactly where the garbage truck is going to park at this moment, but the service only goes 25 feet into the property. And so the location of the actual trash room is too deep into the property for regular service. There would be an additional charge if they took service from that room. So that's why there's this secondary staging area.
Okay, thank you. I still have a few more questions. Bear with me. So these are going to move to more material questions. So the windows that are that don't have the projection, are those considered? Are they going to be flush with the wood siding, or will they be punched in at all? Question for the architect.
The detail of the paneling does have a slight reveal to kind of capture the gap between the paneling and the cladding wall, and then the window has only about an inch projection, so there will be a little bit of a recess to the window in both the metal paneling and the wood look paneling detail.
But about an inch or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then the paneling, the wood paneling that is sort of predominant on the facade, the materials board was showing a panel that's maybe 5 inches wide or so. Is that roughly the grain you're thinking? I only ask because the elevations are sort of showing a finer grain for that vertical wood paneling.
Yes, it's about 6 inches wide, correct.
6 inches wide, okay. Just making notes here. And then the materials board also has a place for white plaster, but I didn't see that anywhere in the elevations. Could you identify where that's occurring?
I know that's a little confusing. The plaster sample is just the texture, and the 3 paint colors surrounding it are what the plaster would be painted.
A second. Oh yeah. In some of the renderings, in the elevations, it's a little hard to see, but in the renderings, I kind of see that there's a soffit that is the same material as the sort of honey wood color, but it's not very apparent in all the renderings. So I just kind of wanted to confirm that the soffit of sort of the overhang with the beams is the wood, the honey wood paneling, and then it would be sort of separated by the brown beams.
That's correct. Yep.
It's using that. Okay. It's the same as the wall material, right?
Yes.
I think that is the majority of my questions.
Great.
I have a
Um,
follow-up.
One more question. Sorry, one more. On our elevation where the windows are on the Charleston side, it kind of looks like we have a spandrel glass, but it's not spandrel. Is that plastic?
It will be a spandrel glass panel, yes.
It's like a dark.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is the charcoal plaster, and it'll be painted to match that anodized bronze color.
So is there spandrel in the project?
No.
Okay, so that's plaster. Okay, go ahead, board members.
Just a follow up on because the landscape plan isn't changed now that the transformer is moved. I'm assuming there'll be further landscaping that you'll be taking care of that corner where the transformer was to be located.
That is correct. We actually do have a landscape plan with that planting adjusted in our presentation. If you'd like me to share my screen again.
Okay.
Okay. So in this version, we've extended the planting out to kind of recapture that space that used to be dedicated to the transformer pad. And you can see that it's allowed us to add an extra tree as well.
Okay, have you while you're looking at that, there's this, that's an interesting corner. It's a access to the bicycle path.
Correct.
And there are other kind of objects at that location. I believe there's some kind of a light there.
Are you referring to this?
Signage? No, just on the path itself. So
Here.
you'll coordinate that corner with whatever is going on there. There is no access out of the site at that location, right?
This is open. This whole paving area is open to the multi-use
Open to the path?
Yeah,
Okay.
our fence actually cuts in at the building line.
Okay.
And this gate here is extra wide so folks with bikes can wheel through with their handlebars.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been working with the transportation department to make sure we leave the kind of double loaded entry to the path free and clear for cyclists.
Good. Thanks.
There's a typo on here, right? It says transformer area right there.
Yeah, that looks like a note that didn't quite get deleted, correct?
And then just to clarify, in this actual transformer, you were saying there would be bushes in this area?
There would be bushes in the planting area in front of the transformer.
So there's no protection happening on the sides that I've outlined?
We don't believe that will be necessary to shield it from public view. We'll do some studies to make sure of that. But the side to the north of it is actually another parking space. So that will certainly be left open, and we'll have some bollards along the parking striping line between the transformer and the parking space to protect the transformer from any vehicular collisions.
I'd like to ask one more too, actually. The garbage pad is for putting the garbage bins. Will it be bins?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they'll sit actually on the road and be collected in the street?
Correct. Yeah, the trash truck will pull up along Charleston Road and access the bins from there.
It's a pretty tight street with, of course, a bicycle way on that side as well. But there is no alternative possibility there, is there?
No, we worked with the kind of recycling and waste team at the city to identify this location as their desired location for pickup.
And they pushed on this for this to be it, huh? Okay, I mean, I guess they collect it so early in the morning that there is no significant traffic happening at that point. But it could become an issue relative to the traffic on the street and the garbage truck picking up large bins and simply the traffic on that Charleston area. I'm just kind of making comment about that.
Elizabeth, could you indulge me once more? I'll be quick.
Absolutely, go ahead.
To the staff, the requirement that the electrical transformers be located outside of the setback is a zoning requirement, is it not? As I read it, it was that no structure can be located in the setback.
Exactly.
So is that zoning requirement eligible for a concession? Could the applicant request a concession from that particular standard?
I would suppose so, yes.
Thank you. To my colleagues on the ARB, do I recollect correctly that we had a project, Lytton Gardens, at the corner of Lytton and Middlefield, and we had quite a fuss over a transformer because it was located in the setback, how we would ask for it to be screened. Do you two remember that? It was on Lytton Avenue, outside of the fence and right next to the sidewalk. Am I just missing that, or maybe someone else supports what I'm remembering?
How long ago was this?
2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, yes, I do. It was on Lytton, correct? Yes, it was out on Lytton.
But certainly that was within the setback, no?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to see if I'm remembering that right. Thanks.
You did.
That's my question.
Yes, but then you're suggesting that we have another concession possibility here. There are 3 so far. And
question, David.
It's just
it's a question. Okay, you want to leave it for comments later?
Yes. I have one more question, actually. Given the updated landscaping in this area, would we be saving tree number 6 on the site?
We could certainly explore that possibility. This is a fairly recent development.
All right. Are there any more questions? Should we close that up? Okay, let's close it up. Thank you for answering our questions, applicant. One thing that was discussed also is that we are going to go each person, and we're going to limit to 10 minutes originally. And then if we go past 10 minutes, we'll sort of ask that person to pause and then come back around so that everybody gets a chance to speak over the course of a half an hour. So Board Member Balte, we'll start with you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much to the applicant, for the community, to the local politicians pushing this project forward. It's a fantastic project, and I can wholeheartedly support recommending and endorsing it. I think I'm going to still give it a review as I would any other project that we look at. So I usually start with the larger site planning issues. I think the site planning here is wonderful. Having that private outdoor garden in the back is very well situated. It'll have good sunlight. It gives the residents privacy. It's just a wonderful space to see so much thought put into an outdoor area like that is fantastic. Additionally, I find that the way the front is landscaped is also wonderful. This is a building with many pedestrian-oriented residents, and having such a lovely walkway parallel to the sidewalk, nicely landscaped, linking into the pathway into the park and the crosswalks across the street to the shopping center is just fantastically well done. I think the renderings show how generous and comforting it will be to walk into this building. And that's entirely appropriate for the type of building it is. It's wonderful because it's a busy street. I really, hats off to the designers, the architects and landscape crew. I think it's exceptionally well done. Whether or not it's a low-income housing building, I wish all buildings could have that level of thought put into the entry. Regarding the parking situation, I find that I think it's going to be perfectly the right amount of parking. The staff during the day will use about half of those lots, and having spaces that can be used for other purposes, such as Lyft drivers, deliveries, things like that, is wonderful. It's again about the right need. I find myself convinced that the needs of a building like this are much lower than what we typically have for a multifamily building. And I think this will work great. I think the community can be assured there will not be a huge amount of overflow parking anywhere else. There will not be a large impact on the traffic patterns, because this type of building doesn't have a huge traffic impact. As people have said, most residents in this facility don't drive. So I think it's an excellent solution. Hats off to everybody who's made that possible. The building itself is beautiful to behold. It's attractive, interesting. It's got a logical floor plan and massing. It all comes together. Hurrah. The biggest drawback I have if I want to look for something is that I don't see as much private open space outdoors. That's balconies for each unit. And I know that's hard to do on this type of facility. Nonetheless, it's something we ask for on almost every multifamily project we look at as the Architecture Review Board. And we've discussed whether the standard should be different if it's a low income type building, and we've all agreed it should not. If this were subject to our review, I'm sure that would come up more forcefully, so I'm pointing that out. What I see is a real missed opportunity, though, to have an outdoor roof deck on the third floor on the front of the building where the massing is stepped down because of the distance requirements. It would make a wonderful outdoor garden up there. I would really encourage the applicant to just consider if that's feasible from a structural or practical point of view, or perhaps a budgetary issue. But it's a wonderful place for a garden. I'm perfectly comfortable with the density and unit counts. I'm perfectly comfortable with the height of this building. It's a great place for a building like this. I'll caution the applicant that the metal panels you're proposing, what's shown at the material board, is nice, but it requires a lot of detail attention, how it meets the windows, how it comes at the edge of the soffit. You really need to think about that carefully, or else your contractor will mess it up. I find in general, the materials are definitely high quality, beautiful materials. The colors are strong and attractive. The contrast is nice. I would like to see detailed specifications provided on your final package, so staff has a way of actually gauging what do you mean by slate blue. We need a manufacturer's paint color, something like that. So we have a final reference. That's a standard, again, we hold all applicants to, and this building should not be treated differently. It would be nice to see a final resolution of what the windows are. Again, that should be in the design package. I imagine they will be vinyl windows. That's unfortunate. They're not as nice as aluminum, but I can easily understand why you want to do that. On the landscaping, the only one that caught my eye was the Afrocarpus phallatus, the yellow wood tree. Struck me as an odd choice. It's not commonly used around here. It's not a native tree. You've got the entire side of the landscape parking area with this one clustered tree that I think will just grow into a big green mass. It's not a terribly designed approach when everything else is so thoughtfully done. Nonetheless, it probably will provide great privacy screening to the neighbor there. I would like to see the staff really carefully check the percentage of shading on the parking lot. It's something that we've held very firmly to for surface parking lots because we try to push parking underground as much as possible. And numerous applicants have struggled. When I glance at sheet PL 1.2, I find myself not convinced by the calculations, and would appreciate if staff could just go through that and hold it to the same standard as every other project. If native plantings are not a standard, then that's fine. And I find the landscaping is otherwise quite nice. Osmo, I have a whole series of comments that are more general in scope and not related to this project. Can we come back to that kind of a discussion afterwards? Things like this illustrates an issue about the height limit, about the transformer location, parking questions. Are you okay with approaching it that way?
They are related to this project, though.
Well, only indirectly. I mean, they're not related to this building or what we would be approving.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of the 10 minutes, you still have a good 3.5 minutes left. So if you want to, it's up to you. We can come around as well.
Yeah, I'd rather, that's some of my comments about this building. Basically, it's a great project. Thank you.
Thanks. Alrighty, Board Member Hirsch, let me just reset the timer.
I can just ditto a lot of what Peter has said here. Anyhow, regarding the quality of this project, it's going to be a very exciting project to see when it comes up. I'd like to kind of discuss something not related to the project, but to the process here. And I want to acknowledge with considerable concern that I feel we are asked to review projects based on these state regulations. Can imagine that if the project comes to us for our comments and if we make some reasonable recommendations, they are not heeded by anyone, that we are likely to soon realize the futility of making any comments at all. I mean, I think that could significantly diminish the quality of architecture in this community. But to move on, I've had a lot of experience with supportive housing, affordable housing. So I'm more focused sort of on the inside, outside, outside, inside relationship of this building. It does so very, very well, I think, in many respects. The L-shaped plan, I think, is very effective. Having the circulation at that corner and all the community rooms that happen inside is a very good idea. But there is one aspect that I think doesn't really work well on the inside, and that is this sort of extended corridor for a single room at the end of this corridor. And it's a wider corridor as well, if you look at the typical floor plan. It extends forward of the other two longer corridors and comes to the face of the building. And it's really just kind of a wasted space. And I don't see, I do see a reason for it because it brings in natural light to the middle of the building. But I also see that you could consider this a programmatic possibility and use that space for something. Computer rooms, we have used that in my office, or computer training room, which is part of your program. And it could have a glass door, and all of the light from the outside could come through to the corridor as well. And it could be a space that is used in some reasonable way. The ground floor lobby is really the inside-outside relationship. All on the ground floor bothers me because you come out of the elevator. Isn't it nice if you come out and see a lobby in front of you, rather than having to go around the corner? The lobby in itself doesn't really relate to the functions of what a normal lobby would do. And I think that diminishes the whole entry to the building, the way it's presented. And if you could switch it, get the bathrooms out of that location, you could have an ample lobby inside-outside relationship there. The front wouldn't be extremely affected by it. And you would eliminate the bathrooms being inside of another functional area, so that the people on the ground floor have the use of it, to the use of the lobby to find access to the bathrooms. I suggest that you consider that. The corridor actually from the parking lot, because a lot of the people entering the building, all of the people probably entering the building, in fact, you know, it's almost the front entry is almost going to be ceremonial. Day by day, everybody who uses this building is going to come in from the parking lot one way or another. And it is adjacent to parking. Isn't it possible to consider some kind of enclosure from the parking lot that would perhaps have glass, maybe a diffuse glass on one side, and allow you to get through to the lobby, to the entry, to the functions that happen on the first floor, without having to come through a kind of a garage-like entry at that point? It hasn't been really explored to the possibilities there. I like obviously like the sawtooth bays. I think they're very, very effective on the front of the building. And although in the rendering from across the street, you see what appears to be that metal surface on the side of the bays that face east, I wonder why, when you have such a success and the proportions of the front of the building are so successful, why you couldn't use the same exact detail as on the front in all of the other units that are on the east facing side. And it also brings up the issue of how to treat the corner and the two bedroom units. That's the one unit that really doesn't work with a sawtooth, and there are a fair number of them. So why couldn't you switch the unit that is an efficiency on the front corner and put the 2-bedroom unit there, which has much more space? Then all of the efficiency apartments on the side will be the same configuration. Whether or not you change the facade, I think that's a significant improvement to this building. And you could, I'm sure, replan those 2-bedroom units to create a better living room and a better organized bedrooms. It's one of those things that no, it's not normally our bailiwick here, but it's something that sort of stands out to me as one who has dealt with this kind of planning issue quite a lot. The front elevation, as I say, is wonderful. The side elevation, I think, is really wonderful. And then the rear is a much more mundane and rather harsh, at least in our drawings, which unfortunately aren't as good as the images that you showed today. But since the garden, as everybody said so far, is such a wonderful space, I wonder if you couldn't have windows in that facade that allowed more of a look down on the garden itself. You know, it's a feature. It's such a significant feature to the design and concept for this project that I would think it would be useful to have windows, vertical windows that may be vertical and horizontal together, that would allow you to be more aware of the garden space below. So just a couple of other smaller comments, but if we're talking about Eichlers, you could certainly, on the corridor up above, you could certainly use strip windows between the expressed beams and provide a sort of a light at the ceiling level or in a recess of the ceiling that made the whole structure look like an Eichler there, with the extension of the beams and the light quality of the wood on the ceiling. I think that would be a significant improvement to the top of that building. I'm sort of concerned with another issue here, and that is that there's going to be van delivery, I believe, to this building, and a lot of the tenants will be taking places in vans. And I hope that you've considered that. We haven't discussed it at all, but the van coming in, turning around, picking up people, how will that work? Actually, I could have asked that in a question, so maybe this would be a sort of follow-up question to Kate about whether you've considered how the vans will access the site. I just want to wind up by saying that I think it's going to be a superb project when it is completed. I hope that somehow we are made aware of what it's going to be when it goes through the process. I think that we should maybe, if we're not going to be, it's ministerial, if we're not going to be active and a part of the process from here on, maybe it would be a good idea for us to be involved a little earlier on. And I can really wind up with that comment and come back later with others if needed.
Good timing, David. We were just at the 30 seconds left.
Did I do it?
You did it. All right, let me start the timer for myself. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you to all the members of the public that came out to sort of speak their mind on this project. And I think we all share a similar excitement for this project because it is really exciting to kind of see something like this come up. And so I think we're all really supportive in general. I was a little emotional, I have to say, listening to some of the public comment. So I will kind of, most of my comments are similar to what Board Member Balte was saying. I would have these comments on any other application. And so I'll kind of go, try to go in order. I have a concern on the west elevation of the property. That's the elevation that kind of butts up against the multi-use path that goes to Mitchell Park. And I believe that's a stairwell or something. Currently, that's the light colored stack bond. It's kind of like a big blank wall on that side. Perhaps that's a really good opportunity for art. I think that corner where people are kind of using that multi-use path could actually, it's a really active corner in a lot of ways. And programmatically on the building, it's kind of the electrical and, mechanical corners, which is not great on the ground floor, but I understand you have to put it somewhere. But maybe the alternative might be to make that wall more of an art opportunity. And if not art, then potentially consider, different colored tiles or something to make that image. A lot of people are going to be looking at that as they're going to be walking down that path. And so I would encourage the applicant to consider that. Another item that I had on the facade, the blue material is actually really great. When I was there visiting the site, I noticed there's like a relationship to the Charleston Plaza, the blue roofs across the street. So I really kind of appreciate, I'm not sure if it was inspired, but it'll go really nicely in the area. And so I think that was a really good idea. So I'm really supportive of the blue material and the wood material. The kind of browner upper level soffits, it's kind of something I'm sort of struggling with a little bit. I feel like with Eichlers, there's this like partie diagram, if you will, of really strong roof line, and then this like vertical kind of body that comes from it. And on a one-story building, a lot of people use the contrast, like they kind of have like a strong white, light colored fascia, and then they'll use like a dark wall color, or they'll do the opposite. They'll kind of bring out a bright wall color and use like a dark fascia and dark beams. And I can kind of see this is where that's going. Unfortunately, with the renderings, it kind of, maybe because of the way this is looking, it's a little muddied, where I feel like that roof line wants to be strong and it kind of is appearing strong in some of the renderings, but maybe because it's dark, it's sort of falling to the back a little bit. So that's something I might just kind of put out there for food for thought, that maybe that dark brown color may not be the best choice back there. I do think that wood soffit is going to look really nice from the ground. So you kind of want something to really offset that or boost that. The materials board was a little tricky to follow, I have to admit, because there was kind of the color sample and then there was the shape. And typically we actually like in the material where we like to see the shape and the actual material that's going to be used versus the color. So that's why it's a little tricky to kind of make these comments, because trying to do a lot of inferences. And then on the fourth floor, board member Balte mentioned a roof deck. I was also thinking that as well, but I know that's really hard with a type 5 building. But needless to say, I think also there could be maybe more glazing on that upper level. You can see on the floor plan, it's just circulation. I have to disagree with board member Hirsch about the corridor space and recapturing that for a piece of program. I know I also work in housing, and a lot of my superiors and I kind of have disagreements about that, because I think what's really great about the plan is that you are including natural light in the circulation space, which typically on a double loaded corridor you almost never get. And what's so great about Eichler buildings is that there's such a strong relationship of inside outside and including natural light every which way you can. So I actually really appreciate that the applicant chose to bring those corridors to the outside, to bring that natural light in there, because otherwise you have to spend money on lighting that's going to be on 24/7, and that's not really the best use of energy, I think. So I do kind of appreciate that the corridors go to the edges to sort of create that inside outside appearance. And so one last comment on the materials, I guess, with that brown, is that I do have a concern that it may be too many materials. There's like 4 different colors. I feel like typically Eichlers have like two colors, like the contrasting colors. I can see the need of having a third, for accents. So I might make a note to simplify, if possible, the materials. I support Board Member Balte's comment about the shading in the parking lot. I also support Board Member Hirsch's comment about considering flipping room 102 and 103. So flipping the meeting spaces with the lobby so that there's a better connection to the elevator. I think that'll make circulation a lot more simplified. I would recommend that with the updated landscaping plan that you try to save tree number 6. I think that tree is looking pretty good. And also in the back, where we do have a lot of that courtyard area, there are trees there. So I might just encourage the applicant to save those as well. And so for the record, those are trees 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, I think all fit in that courtyard area. Let's see. I think that might be the majority of my comments. Yeah, I really appreciate the project otherwise. Oh yeah, transformer location. I think it makes sense where it is. Obviously a little bit more screening would be great, but I understand it's probably protected enough where it is. Okay, so oh yeah, and one more comment on the lighting. The cut sheets that we were given didn't really specify a color temperature. So I would just put my support out there for 3500 K or lower, because 4K is really rough in the eyes. Okay, that's the end of my comments. I also did it in 10 minutes, very exciting. So we'll go around. So Board Member Balte, if you have any further.
Yes, if you'd indulge me, Chair Thompson, I wanted to bring up 4 sort of general comments, I guess, or maybe specific, but first would be about the transformer. I'm putting it this way because I'm not sure it's really part of the ARB purview, but it seems to me that it really is worth a special effort between the staff and the applicant and perhaps the utility department to not use a parking place for a transformer. I think there's possibly a different interpretation of the code that's possibly been done in the past that would let the transformer be in the setback. Possibly you could use one of your remaining concession to put the transformer up in the setback, or at the worst case, put the transformer at the back of the parking lot. At least there you'd use a parking space that's much less easy to use. I just think it's a shame to lose a parking space on a building that's nominally underparked, and that's potentially the comments we've received from the community, without really making an exceptional effort to find another solution. And I think there are other solutions. So that's just my 2 cents on the transformer. I'd like to point out that this building illustrates the difficulty we have with our 150-foot height limit setback from residential properties. In this case, the building is being impacted by that on the front because of the housing neighborhood across the street, which is marginally, if at all, impacted by this building in a visual sense. And to me, it's just illustrative of the sort of extreme requirement when you say you have to have a 35-foot height limit within 100 feet of house, 150 feet of housing, without any consideration for something like a big boulevard separating these neighborhoods. It just doesn't make sense. And I'd like us to, at a high level in the city, we should be thinking about that as we focus on looking at those requirements again. I think it's worth thinking about the way that traffic studies are done. In this building and in many buildings where parking is no longer required, the reality is that fewer residents will have cars. And when they do have cars, they won't be at the building. The traffic study was done, when you look at it more carefully, based on national standards for this type of housing. National standards means that they have parking spots on the property. That's what generates the trips. Their counts show that they're estimating 185 trips, because there's a reduction in the office count, would be caused by on-site parking for this building, which just isn't going to be the case. And there will not be all these trips generated. And we need to bring our standards in line with what's happening. What's happening is that state law and current practice and people's habits are reducing the amount of parking we have in dense multifamily projects. And then when our engineers are doing trip counts based on other logic, it doesn't make sense. It leads to a lot of strife in the community and inaccurate design plans. And we should really look hard at that. When a building doesn't have a parking facility, it's much less likely to generate parking trips. Lastly, we've just gone through with staff creating objective design standards, and I would like to know if staff has analyzed this building, if those standards were to be applied, all the detailed stuff we put in place last year, how would this design fare? It's more than I want to take on myself, but if staff had the bandwidth to do that, it would be a wonderful analysis to see how this design stacks up to the recently drafted standards we've put out. I think we all think it's a good looking design. Does it meet those standards? So those are the 4 comments. Thank you, Chair Thompson, for letting me put them out in public.
Thank you. Board Member Hirsch, do you have any more comments?
Yes, the same comment about the transformer as Peter's just made. I think it deserves some more attention. It would be so much nicer if we could get it as the 4th item that is excluded on this building from being restricted by that. And then it certainly could be located in an area where there is plenty of landscaping and not conflict with the area of the driveway and the extra parking spot that would be possible here. I'm again mentioning and hoping that somebody could answer the question about the van delivery and turnaround issue, because I mostly believe this because I happen to go to the pickleball courts past the Abilities Path parking lot, which is filled with these vans, and I do know that they are used to transport the residents to other locations and in larger numbers of resident locations. So it's a consideration that hasn't been mentioned. In response, Ozma, to your comment about the light in the corridor, you might have missed the fact that I said that it could be a glass door to that extension area, and the outside light could come through from the window just as it does now. And the corridor, I agree that it should have and does have terrific light in the corridor. And I missed that opportunity many times when of course you have a building that's right up against other buildings. You can't have light in the corridor like this, but this one respects that possibility and does so very well to provide the light on the inside, and should do it in that location, except it's just an architectural issue. You could put a glass door that would fill the frame and almost the same light would come through. And then it could be a much more useful space. As at the present time, it really isn't functioning very well. I really encourage the design team to work on the possibility of moving the 2-bedroom unit to the corner of the building. I know it will change roof lines, and it could change roof lines or it could change unit counts, whichever way you decide to choose to answer that issue. But it will definitely improve the 2-bedroom unit, and the same is true at the other one that's on the far western corner of the building. The living room space is simply the interior planning for that particular unit is hardly as successful as either the efficiencies or the 1-bedrooms, which are very reasonable. Some of the general comments I like very much that Peter has made, and just to put my imprimatur on some of those as well. Especially as to the 100-foot, 50-foot distance requirement, which we run into before and caused a big problem. In fact, I want to comment that I went back to look at that building on El Camino. What's the street name that's it's named after there? Jody?
Wilton Court for the
Wilton
affordable
Court,
housing.
yeah. I went to look at Wilton Court in relation to its neighbors the other day. And I have to say that I actually felt a little sorry about the neighbors, that Wilton Court is pretty damn close. And the mass of it is pretty significant. You have to accept some of that as a needed requirement here in the city of Palo Alto now, because something that we will really need to address much more in order to answer 6,500 or plus units of new housing in the next 10 years or 8 years. But in this case, frankly, there's only one house across the street within the 150 dimension. And then there's the shopping center at the corner. You know, it's perfectly located for its size. So I think that we have to look at that 150-foot dimension more carefully in the city, because it's going to be a big problem for us to get the proper density as we move forward. But I'm really looking forward to this building, and I think the architects are really doing a terrific job.
Yes, on the van question, we may want to have the applicant answer that.
Certainly, I'm happy to address that. We did talk to CBG, our civil engineer, about the turning radii for a typical, I'm assuming you mean like a typical kind of paratransit van.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So they did not have a concern. They said that the standard city driveway width would be sufficient for a paratransit van to pull into a designated parking space and then back out and exit the driveway facing forward. There would be no need to pull in and then back out onto Charleston Road.
Thank you. Just good idea to look into it. Thank you.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'll add to that is on the transformer location, I think I'm more in support of Board Member Balte's note about putting it at the back side of the site than bringing it up to the front, only because I know that the planning department is trying to keep transformers out of the front, and I want to respect that. So that's all I'll say on that. Okay. I'm trying to think, I guess we're not doing a motion. Is there any last things that you want to say before we close out?
Yes, Ozma, I do have, I found, if I may, just one brief. Yeah. I found that the drawings were very, very hard to read, that the colors didn't differentiate themselves, that when you put shadows on a drawing with dark colors like this, you tend to muddy the whole water here. It was really, really hard to read. I was surprised to look at the rear elevation and note that some of the horizontal darker colors were not as big as they looked on the drawings that we had in our set. And it was hard to judge it. For me, it was even harsher than it is in reality as the rear elevations. So maybe, I don't know. I mean, sections through are better maybe than accompanying elevations would be better. But this is something that actually we'd ask city planning to talk to the applicants about before the drawings got to us, and look at them and see if they're really quite readable. Or, at the very least, maybe when there's a time when Ozma, you and I are looking at a project prior to, can be enough in time prior to the project that we could make a comment like this. But I agree with you 100%. It was very hard to read the rear elevations in the areas where the shadows were too strong.
Yeah, I was struggling a little bit with the materials just because, yeah, it's a little hard to read. What did you guys think about my comment on the materials? Are you guys feeling good about that brown on the upper levels? And also the amount of the number of materials?
Yes, I can comment on that. I thought that there were really too many materials. too many different colors.
Yeah, I mean, the form is so simple, it would benefit from maybe simplifying. Sorry, go ahead, Board Member Balti.
I guess to me, I thought the colors, and I don't mind the one extra color material, et cetera, up high. I thought maybe the stone by the front door was a little bit overkill.
Yes, agreed.
I just don't think it's necessary.
Don't either.
You don't typically see that on an ICO, to be honest. It seems like an applique. But I feel overall this building is exceptionally well designed compared to many for-profit residential buildings we see. This is still pretty darn good. And I want to just encourage it to move forward. I think we got to stop sometimes this review process being so detailed. So yes, for what it's worth, I agree with you, Osmo. There's perhaps one too many color, form, material. I agree that the material board is not as clear as it should be. I think there's more detailing needed, but I think this building is great and needs to get built. And we should probably close with that, Osmo. You should give it.
Yeah, I don't think any of us disagree. I mean, we're here just to provide our feedback, whether it's useful or not. And so I want to have, this board has integrity. We have good things to say about buildings, I think. So I don't want to, I don't want to discount some things that are important that we might have to say.
Yeah. And thank you, board. Maybe if I can summarize a little bit and we can see if the applicant has any questions. I was hearing the question about the 50% shading. We will certainly go double check all of that. We will work with the applicant to see if we can get more natives. That is a discretionary requirement, but we will see what we can do. I'm hearing the discussion about the different materials, so I know the architect will look into that. The transformer location, I know that we looked at a rear parking lot location, and I'm not remembering exactly why we discounted that, but we'll take a second look at that. And if the applicant chooses to use a concession, then we'll entertain that as well. The trash location, I think we've got fairly well worked out, but we can go back around that one more time. I was hearing about some movement of the 2-bedroom units, which is not fully in our purview, but the applicant can take a look at that. For the paratransit vans, it sounds like we do have the circulation that's needed for that. The drawings were hard to read. I think part of that is just, us being virtual and not being able to get our hands on the plans early hinders that a little bit. And the trees, saving some extra trees if we can in the front and in the rear garden area, we'll look at that. There was a flipping of a unit potentially. Is it 102 and 103 that can be looked at?
It's on the ground floor. That's just the lobby, considering shifting the lobby entrance.
Okay. And then the stair, the elevation facing the trail, there's a large stairway. If anything can be done to add some interest there. And then, I believe those are the main items I heard for the project itself. I did hear Board Member Balte's sort of general comments, which I appreciate, and maybe that's something that we agendize for later to have a more full discussion about.
On the height.
Yeah, I think the 4 different topics could be interesting, to see what input the ARB has on those. But with that, I don't know if the applicant has any questions, Chair?
Yeah, I'm willing to allow the applicant if they have questions or comments of our feedback.
Certainly not a question, but just an item to clear up the rear transformer location. That exceeds maximum allowed conduit runs from the electrical vault along the street. So we really are in a battle between the desire from Palo Alto Electrical to have the transformer practically on the sidewalk, and the planning department understandably wanting it further away from the street. So the location we have it shown is really sort of the optimal balance of having it behind the setback, but still close enough to the vault for their use.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, and thank you for the summary, Jody. That seems pretty right in terms of our comments.
Just one other, may I make one more?
Is it on the transformer vault?
Just want to say that, you know, the idea of the exit path is not a bad idea, and it's unfortunate that the county didn't say it was a good idea, or because it does get the traffic, you know, away from coming onto East Charleston. And I've had experience with that. You know, when you go to the shopping center and you come out onto East Charleston to get back to Middlefield, if you're going to, let's say, turn left on Middlefield and you have to come out into a traffic lane, I have seen traffic back up past this project or up to this project. And for people who are driving, even if there's a small number of them driving to get back into traffic, that's going to be very difficult if they're headed towards Middlefield. And if you imagine a van coming out of this area and trying to turn left, it really, really will be a problem. So I would say that, you know, we should recommend that planning and transportation look closely at that. Perhaps transportation could make some comments that might be helpful in this regard to make that exit possibility better than what it would be to Charleston.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Hirsch. All right, well, I think we've discussed this at length, so I really appreciate everyone's input, and really thank you to the applicant for bringing such an incredible project to Palo Alto, and thank you to the city for supporting it as well. So I think this is going to be really great for our community.
Here, here.
With that, we will move on past this item. We should take a little break, maybe 7 minutes, because it's been 2.25 hours since we started. So maybe let's come back at 10:55. Let's take 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
5 minutes. Well, my screen is not open up yet.
Getting a little refill. Well, I think it's 10:05. We're all back.
Hi, Ozma.
Hi. Nothing like 10-minute refresher.
After a killer project, right?
Yes, we were all highly disagreeing on everything.
Oh, that was stressful.
Well, that project was awesome. I'm so happy. It was a good one. Alrighty. Jody, are we good to keep going?
Yes, we're good.
Alrighty. I shall, what's the word? Resume our meeting again. So we have one action item. So this is to discuss additional eligible projects. So my understanding is that due to a database issue, there were 7 projects that were left off of our original list to consider for ARB awards. And so I think staff has those 7 additional projects. And then I think I will we'll open it up for members of the public to speak. I see we have former board member Lou in the public attendees list at this time. So we'll kind of hear from that, hear from the public if they'd like to speak, and then discuss internally about considering these 7 additional projects.
Yes, so thank you. As you mentioned, former board member Lou did bring to our attention that at least one project was missing. When I combed back through the database, I found that there were a handful of projects missing. So I will go through those. I did want to just remind us, though, that we did at our last hearing, out of the 91 eligible projects, we did come up with 6 award winners and 1 honorable mention. And so I would assume that we would continue with those award winners and just look at these new projects to see if they rise to the same level. If they if they do, then, figure out if they're deserving of award, or if they don't, then they can be taken off the eligibility list. So let me share my screen, get the additional list here. Let's see, sorry, one sec. Okay, so you see the additional list, correct? Let's see if I can make it full screen.
It's still dark for me. Is anyone else able to see anything?
Yep, me too.
Might want to, oh, there it is.
Got it.
Yeah, it just took an extra minute, I guess, because the photos are large. And actually, it looks like we only have one attendee, which is former board member Lou. So Medina, maybe if you can just go ahead and promote him. Might make the conversation easier. So this is the additional list. One thing that I did find out, 380 Cambridge is not built yet, so cannot be in the running for that reason. The next new project would be 4200 El Camino Real, which is a facade renovation to accommodate America's Tire. The next one would be the Magical Playground. I heard that this was considered before, but I couldn't find it on my list, and so we can discuss that. There is the 430 Forest Avenue project. This is 13 units of various size. It does have basement parking and public art involved in the project. And so I have a photo of the interior courtyard and the public art there. There's also 3421 Hillview, which is on the VMware campus. I believe that VMware campus has received awards in the past, if that weighs into your decision. There is the 3170 Porter Drive, which is a research park project. The front elevation here cannot necessarily be seen from the street. This is more of a, if you're right up on the sort of loading driveway there, you could see this view. And then last but not least is the Hana House renovation. The exterior renovation was not as extensive, probably more the interior renovations happened here. And so I can go back through those as needed.
Yeah, this is helpful. Maybe keep the images up. And then our member of the public, former board member Lou, if you would like to speak on this item regarding any project that's been here, I will open it up to you.
Yeah, hi. I went through my notes this morning from the 2015 ARBs awards. And I did see that the 456 University Avenue Hana House was on our eligibility list back then. And I think it was built in 2013. On the VMware, like 3421 Hillview, that one also appeared on the list, on the 2015 list. It appeared as 3431.
There are several different buildings at this location.
I know. And my recollection is that that garage project and the expansion project went to the ARB. There was also a renovation of an existing building. I think it was the old Syntex, one of the old Syntex projects. So those may have been built in 2014. I think that the construction on some of the new buildings was delayed. And the previous award was for the older campus and not this new expansion project. If you haven't seen it, the landscaping by Peter Walker is pretty stunning. There's like a water staircase, and I can't remember exactly if how we considered that back in 2015. Yeah, and then the 3170 Porter Drive, it's something that I actually photographed when we were doing the research for the 2021 awards. But somehow it didn't make the list, but it was sort of on my mind on it, and I did consider that one. So that's all I've got.
Alex, do you have any information you can add about Dave Solnick's building at Forest?
Oh, right. Yes. So, so some of the board members may know that he was a developer in town. On this particular one, he was not the developer. And this is a kind of interesting project. It's a combination of rental and ownership housing. So there's a penthouse on the 3rd floor. There are 2 townhouses that were for sale at the back of the property. And then there were 13 rental apartments on the 1st and 2nd floors. And those are mostly 2 bedrooms. And I think there may be like two 1-bedrooms. And there is a underground parking for the apartments. Every unit has a electric car charger down in the basement. The project did need a DEE to get the to put the handicap or to put the garage ramp in the side setback, and that did come up as an issue with the Palo Alto neighborhood group. And the project, there's an existing house that's been converted into apartments to the left of the project. That's historic. So this project did go to the HRB. If you see in the photo on the screen, there's like a portico share with a 2-story element with the driveway below. That was there to sort of push the building back to align with the existing house. It was meant to bring the scale down and back to align with the neighboring house. I think the only other thing I have to add is that there was that it was planned to be net zero. I'm not sure if it's actually met the net zero requirements, but the entire roof is covered with photovoltaics, and that was the intent of it. I think it's kind of hard to do net zero if every single unit is charging their car and people are working at home. So I'm not sure how it all pencils out at the moment, but that was the intent. So I hope that helps.
There was one more thing. The Magical Bridge Playground, it's a little unclear to me if that was previously awarded. In our staff report from like November of last year, it said that it was awarded in 2015, but is that not the case? Did that not happen?
No, it did. It was built in 2014, and we did give it an award in 2015.
Okay, so this one has already been given an ARB award.
Yeah.
That would disqualify it from this round.
Okay. Yeah, so sorry, I was doing these pretty quickly, so to try and get this on this agenda and be able to finalize.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that we would strike that one. So per my notes, out of this list of 7, I think there's 4 or 5 that have already, 3 that have been considered.
Yeah, so I can delete the playground The others to delete.
Yeah, a Hannah House was considered and 3421 Hillview was considered. Was that right? Or was that
I think a different portion of the VMware campus was considered previously. But I think Porter Drive was considered in this round, correct?
No, I think that I considered it because I knew it was there, but I went through the list and it did not appear on the list. And it was on Grace's. It wasn't on Grace's list to photograph.
Okay.
So I think this one should be on there.
Just as eligible, yes.
Okay, and then 3080 was also removed. Okay, so what does that leave us with? Does that leave us with four left?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for your research, Alex. It's very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Alex.
So I guess, as Jody mentioned, we're not changing our disposition from last time. So the winners that were determined at our last meeting will still be our winners, but I guess this is, maybe we go through and see if there's any support. We don't even need to go through. I guess we can see maybe right now if there's any support to raise one of these projects up to either an honorable mention or a winner. So who'd like to go first?
Who speaks first?
You want to go first, David?
Yes. I agree with Alex. I think that the Porter Drive project is an elegant building, and proportions are just terrific. The choice of the masonry sort of strengthens the entryway there. The mixture of materials is really, really nice. The actual two-story canopied major entry is really quite amazing. Looks to me like the lighting is really well thought out. It's a beautiful entry space, and compared with the scheme itself, you know, where it uses this courtyard so effectively, I think it my take on this is I would like to elevate it to an award level. And sort of my feeling about the other projects, I don't think any of them really are of the quality that they need to be included here on the list. But this one is the exception and ought to be one of, we ought to have 7 awards now.
Okay. Board Member Bolte, do you have, what is your opinion on these items?
I'm trying to parse out what David just said. I guess I'm open to the idea of adding one more award-winning project. I think that's reasonable. However, I don't think it's the Porter Drive project. I think it's the 430 Forest residential project. I think that's a very good design, a good residential project, and it's a good example of how you can meet a really myriad of complex criteria and still get housing that's not for the super rich. This is higher density. And it's built on a budget. This is not super expensive construction either, you know. And so I think this is very award worthy. The Porter Drive building, I think when you're there in person, it's a really gargantuan building. It's just huge. And I don't know, it just doesn't grab me the same way. So my proposal is that 430 Forest be elevated.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Board Member Bolte. Looking at a Porter Drive building on Google Maps, that building is massive. And the picture that we have here is a nice little crop of a very gigantic building that is pretty monotonous in its facade across the street level. So I would not support bringing Porter Drive up.
Yeah, that photo doesn't capture the sense of that building.
No.
I'm making my judgment based on just looking at this very one image here.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
This is what that building looks like from the street, David.
Mm-hmm.
So that little courtyard is here.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this huge kind of
Mm-hmm.
fairly
The amazing part of architectural photography, huh?
Yes. Used to be my profession. Nice with the trees in front of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice when you can't see the building, right?
No, I can understand it works from the courtyard side. I don't think it does from the. I would agree with that.
I mean,
Judgment.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, then it sort of beats it to death in the perimeter, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's fine. This had a place in time at one point in the world. Alternatively, I would say the Forest Drive Google Earth's actually a little bit nicer than the professionally photographed ones. I think it's because this wood panel in the professional photos looks kind of they look kind of.
It has more of a red hue, I think, in the
more like a
professional
red
photos.
hue. Let me go back here. Yeah, it kind of looks red, but over here, this looks a bit more honey and brown. And so honestly, I feel like it looks a little bit better. This is weird to say in the Google Earth Street View than it does in the professional photos. So I could support elevating this either to an honorable mention, or maybe an award. I think we were hoping to have a residential project on the list. And it seems like it has a lot of the same goals that we're hoping residential projects will have in the future.
Well, we looked at a residential project today, which could well be on the list in the future.
Yeah.
And in comparison, I think it's a lot better than this building. So if we're going to elevate it at all, I think an honorable mention is all I would suggest. I find it to be, you know, the sort of falling water look of it, you know, with the extended balcony areas and planes, etc. They don't quite make the same quality in my mind as the aforementioned.
I'd be open to an honorable mention with this one. What do you think, Board Member Balte?
Sure, yeah. I guess I know the building and the architect reasonably well, and I think the spaces inside are pretty nice. He's got a good sense of form and volume, and he details out his windows and stuff pretty nicely. But sure, an honorable mention is fine with me.
Okay. Should we make a motion, Jody? All right. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move that we add the building at 430 Forest Avenue to the award winners as an honorable mention award.
I thought maybe you would second it, Osmo, because you were the one who brought up honorable mention.
I'll second. All right, we got a motion.
And I will conduct the vote. Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Awesome. And thank you, former Board Member Liu, for bringing this to our attention.
Yes, we miss you already.
Great job, guys.
All right, thank you.
And we do have in the staff report next steps that I will work with the chair to get emails out to all the winners We do need to assign specific addresses. I think we had done that. Sheriff, you can remind me.
We had, yeah, we need to pick someone for this one though.
Yes.
Maybe Peter's the right choice.
What?
Just to write a description for the.
Oh, for this one project, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I have it, yeah, I'll add it here, so.
Yeah, maybe we can send that list back out so everyone knows.
Oh, please do. Yeah, please send it with our names attached to the one,
Yeah, this is what we had decided back in the day. So we're adding this.
Yeah, and phone numbers, if you could. Oh, I could look them up, I guess.
Yeah, I can help look up some details.
Okay. So this is how that will shape up.
I get police, hold on. Do I get the fire department one?
You do, yeah.
I do? Oh,
You do.
wonderful.
You get the fire department and you get
One other.
that.
Oh, yeah, I get.
A commercial project.
Yeah, commercial building, yeah, on Cowper, yeah.
Correct, yeah, the 611 Cowper.
Mhm.
And we'll send this out in an email for everyone. Okay, let's keep going. So our next item is approving our minutes for December 2nd. Would anybody like to do that?
Yes, I have one correction I'd like to have us consider on the minutes of December 2nd, please. If you were to go to packet page 139, minutes page 25. This was towards the end of our discussion regarding Castilleja, regarding the facade along, I think it's Forest, the large street, along Kellogg. And also we had the architect come up and he showed some slides illustrating the variation. So it says, Mr. Woltag showed several slides illustrating the variation. The next sentence says, it is not a consistent eave line across the whole facade. And I think he said that it was not a consistent eave line. I think the way it's phrased is not correct. That was a statement made by the architect, not a statement of fact. So I'd like to see us insert the words, he said that, or something to that effect.
Packet page number?
139.
Packet page 139.
I was almost there.
And it's the line underneath Chair Thompson agreed, which is at the very top.
Chair Thompson agreed.
It's just, I know it's picayune, but it's germane to the guts of what I have to say about this project, so it's important to me. That the second sentence in the second paragraph states something that I think is not a statement of fact, and that's what it's implying in this minute.
It's right here, Jody.
Oh, that's why I'm on the wrong page, sorry. Okay, so showed several slides illustrating. Okay, so just he stated.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm asking my colleagues if that's their recollection. I remember the architect making a pitch for his point of view, and that's what he said.
I'm okay with adding a he said in there.
Peter, I think he's saying that it's broken by the.
He was arguing that the facade line was sufficiently broken up and therefore should be approved, and that was his argument. That's not a statement that we all agreed to. That's what I'm trying to be clear on.
Okay.
I'm okay with making that edit.
So then I'll move that we approve the minutes from December 2nd with the change. He said that to the second line of the second paragraph on packet page 139.
Is there a second? David?
Okay, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will conduct the vote. Board Member Baltay?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hirsch?
Yep.
Chair Thompson?
Yep.
Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, let's go to our next one, which is the meeting minutes from January 20th.
I move that we approve the minutes from January 20th.
I'll second.
And I will conduct the vote. Board Member Baltai,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hirsch,
Yep.
Chair Thompson.
Yep.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 2 more items. So the next item is about the California Avenue street improvements and parklets. So at some point, maybe when we have a chance, I guess our next meeting's pretty busy, but maybe the one after that. I would like to put this on an actual study session on the agenda. So this is something that the City Council had made a motion some time back, when we were all kind of locked down and CalAv was closed off, where they had kind of asked the city to look at design ideas for CalAv for it to stay closed off. And so that could be, something, a temporary solution as we have now, or something more permanent if that's the direction they decide to go in. And they had asked, when we had a meeting with the board chairs and the mayor, there was a comment about, what can the ARB do to help? And so that's sort of what I would like the study session to be about. And if you guys have some thoughts on what we could have in advance to make that a successful study session. One of the things I was thinking was like having a site plan and, all of the businesses and maybe some sort of mapping for what is currently happening on CalAv, even if all the temporary stuff. But I think the idea is to kind of understand, this area is kind of developing, a little, what is it? Like the people on the ground are doing the development themselves. The restaurants are choosing their furnishings. And so as the architectural review board, to understand site planning, where music stages make sense if we want that, those kinds of design ideas to start. And then also if we want to consider a charrette, with the greater community, is that something that we would like to help organize as the board, as the architectural review board of Palo Alto? That's something I'd like to agendize in the future as a study session.
I support you doing that, Uzma. I think those are all good ideas, and I think it's a good role for the ARB to expand to.
Yes, I'd like to add a little bit to it. I think that whatever happens, it should somehow include some representation from some of the merchants. I've noted, I just want to, the old World Trade Center in New York City, which unfortunately became a disaster. The ground floor of it was a lot of restaurants, and they had a lot of floating elements in the planning of that. You could well imagine that there could be some merchants kind of selling things in the public space. It could be an interesting addition. Also, our art commission, whatever it's called, they're an interesting body. Sometimes they come up with some very inventive stuff, and sometimes I think it's less than that. But nonetheless, I think they ought to be part of this in some way, because these pieces, whatever they are, that would be part of animating California Street, will be pieces of art as well, or can be pieces of art. And furthermore, there's of course entertainment possibilities there as well, So I think it should be a rather broad committee that does a little discussion. I hate it to be something so big that it comes out with a big report and therefore loses the possibility of being done in a reasonable time. So it would be good if it was a pretty tight committee. And as you say, it was a charrette. I think that's a terrific way to consider it, use our term and see if other people can buy into it as a way of forming a small committee that could work on this together.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I'm glad you guys are both on board with this. I think for our next, when we do agendize as a proper study session, I think we can kind of come up with some ideas for how we want to approach our approach, as it were. And, you know, I think in advance of our study session, you know, maybe like part of me is thinking maybe we would need a site plan, and then also like some precedents if people want to collate those. Like I'm thinking like Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica is a really good pedestrian activity space. There's other really great precedents of pedestrian only spaces that can just maybe help us. And then, yeah, and then I think maybe the outcome of that could be like, yeah, we need somebody on the Arcs board. We need to maybe set up a task force or coalition or something. But it'd be great for all of us to kind of brainstorm some ideas in the study session. So if you do have other things that you'd like to have in anticipation of our study session, let me or Jody know so that we can try to get that, make that a productive meeting for the three of us, or if we have new board members, then the five of us.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to see what I can do about a site plan. I mean, it might just be a Google map or something, unless someone finds something better. And I could certainly collect, if you find good public spaces, I could certainly collect those and put them into a PowerPoint.
Great.
Yeah, that would be great. And I'm willing to, what's been great actually about this last project that we saw, I actually really liked a lot of the site analysis. It wasn't as zoomed in as I was hoping it would be, but even the broader site analysis was really nice. And I'm willing to do a little bit of that just to do some mapping, maybe even just for myself, get a better understanding of the ins and outs of Cal Ave. So, giving myself some homework there. Not all the time that I have.
I heard you.
Any other things on item 7? Nope. All right. Let's
Okay.
move to
When were you thinking you wanted that on an agenda as a study session?
I'm a little worried our next meeting might be too packed. So if the agenda for our next meeting is really what it is in this official reports, that's the 4 items. And we try to end at noon, so maybe unrealistic for next meeting.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the one after that.
But maybe, I mean, the last 2 items are maybe short items, but still, I think maybe next.
Why not, Osmo, why not put it on the agenda anyway? We can always push it off if we have to.
That's a great idea.
More aggressive, not less.
I like that. Let's do that. We'll put it on next meeting's agenda.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, if everyone has example photos, I'll be happy to collect those. And Chair, I'll work with you on a site plan.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to item 8. So that is the objective standards checklist and update.
Yes, so I don't have materials ready just yet, but just wanted to give you an update on this project. You know, we are continuing to move forward. We did have one community meeting so far. We're going to have a second community meeting on March 22nd at 6 p.m. And so we'll get notices out to our mailing list, you know, or email list as that gets closer. For the board, we do have an updated crosswalk document that I'm finalizing right now. And it goes very much, you know, one by one from our design criteria to, you know, what's the proposed objective standard. And so we'll be able to see if there are any gaps and discuss those. Also, the council had asked that we look at the menu items and see about, you know, do we want to add an additional requirement or things of that nature? And so we have a checklist that's in development that would ultimately be used by staff and the developers. But I think it'll help the board just sort of look at, in this area, you've got to pick 2, and in this area, you've got to pick 3. It'll just help line that up in everyone's mind. I know it's been difficult for me, when you read through the larger objective standards. So I will get the crosswalk and the checklist. I'll get it up on the website, for everyone to see, and I'll send a specific email to the board so that it's available, so that you have a couple minutes, more than a couple minutes, to review that before the hearing. So,
Jody, could I ask you a question? Can you do you know whether the council was really talking about more alternatives than what are part of the selection versus another way of interpreting what they said?
I believe off the top of my head, and that's always dangerous. Let me see. I'm trying to pull up my notes so that maybe it's a little more informed.
I think it was, if I remember, I think we had interpreted it one way and then we decided to interpret it both ways. So we had, initially we believed they had asked us to require applicants use a greater number than is required currently in our standards. We had required a smaller number for flexibility. But I think if I recall our last meeting, Peter had suggested adding more options so that, there was like the menu would get longer rather than adding more things to comply with.
Yeah, and so the direct motion is for the building massing / facade sections where there's a menu of choices to increase the number of required choices per category.
That's right. And so we had discussed in our last, when we met last time, that we didn't feel like adding more required options was a good thing to do. I think I remember that being part of our discussion, but that maybe to mitigate this, we would add more menu items.
Yeah,
For
and
me,
I can.
For me, more options are better. Better for the designers, better for the buildings. So I think that's an area where if there's a weakness in what we've have so far, it could be modified there to include more options for the applicants to consider.
I think that's something you were going to work on, if I remember, David.
Yep. Okay.
You were going to create some more options for us.
I will do that. Yes. Thank you. I just want clarity on that issue, as to what it is we're going to look for. Okay.
Alrighty. If there's nothing else, there's a chance to say if there's anything else. If there's nothing else, then thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you all in person in 2 weeks, right?
Yes, correct. March
I
3rd.
definitely plan to be there in person.
I am planning to be there in person as well.
Well, then I'll join you.
Does that mean I get a coffee and a croissant, Jody?
Get back to the standards.
Medina, you heard that. Okay, I think that's 2 chocolate croissants, 1 almond croissants. And David?
Well, I can share in one of those if we split them in half, in both of those.
Splitting in half.
I'm not splitting my chocolate croissants.
We'll get an extra 2.
I guess, are we going to have any tutorials? Like, is it going to be different? Because right now, I have the agenda on my computer and I'm taking notes on, I have 3 screens up right now. So I guess, is there any how are we taking public comment? I guess, are we gonna have any initiation?
It is going to be a little bit different.
That's what you use.
Let it be noted that board member Balta held up a pencil. Anyways.
I'm just gonna show you.
Staff has had a short training session. I think Medina's probably had some additional training. So I'm going to be relying heavily on her. And we also have MidPen, who does the live feeds, will be in attendance. So they'll be there as well. And we'll have an additional person checking vaccine cards at the door. That is a council requirement. So we'll have to make sure who that third person is. I'll work with Medina about getting some treats because we certainly deserve them after 2 some odd years.
Yes.
And if you could all come maybe a little bit early, maybe around 8 o'clock or so. Okay, well, maybe you get off easy, board member
Peter's
Balti.
alarm clock.
Depends on the treats, Jody, my dear.
Okay, we better get 2 almond croissants. So but especially the chair and the vice chair, if you could come a little bit early, because then we could work out the kinks. I don't think it'll be too much extra for you to do, but it would be good just to, get acclimated to the dais again.
Yeah. Be my first time sitting in the middle.
Yes, you were saying that your first time in the actual chair seat. So, all right.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.